lovelies, and welcome back for another video. It's a little bit different today because I am on annual leave, so there's been a lot that I wanted to get off my chest and share with you guys because I've been doing work vlogs for quite a while. I'm going to use this opportunity as like a sit down video, and I've got my drink with me as well, so if you want to join me, go make yourself a cup of tea or get a glass of orange juice. And today we're going to talk about why I chose GP as a training program and career, and I'm also going to talk to you about the recent exam I had, which is the AKT, how to prepare, how to pass, and how I got 91%. So I just wanted to start off on the comment section of nearly every one of my videos, or within my Instagram and my DMs, I always get the same sort of questions, and that is why I chose to do GP training, why I want to do this specialty, and what specifically is good and bad about the training program. So I thought, I'll just talk to you guys about it properly in this sit down video before we move on to the second part of the video, which is all about passing your AKT. So for me, the main reason why I chose the GP was because it allowed me to keep general. There wasn't one specific specialty that I really enjoyed, that I wanted to sort of go down and devote my medical career to, if that sort of makes sense. I quickly realised within FY1 FY2 that I kind of liked everything, and at the time I really enjoyed geriatric medicine, which is kind of like general medicine but for the frail and elderly. So I thought, and at the time I did that rotation with a GP trainee, and she was just telling me about the program, about being a GP and so on, and I knew that I had a GP post coming up in F2. So I gave it a bit of time, had a bit of thought, and I was like, you know what? One thing that I dislike about the job that I do in hospital is that I don't really get continuity of care. These patients come in, they are admitted, and then quite soon after they're discharged, and I just don't know what happens to them, where they go and how they got on, or what other things happen to them in terms of like their medical, physical health. So GP really allowed you to care for that patient in the long term, really form a rapport, get to know them personally, besides just being a patient, and really sort of seeing their journey of disease and treatment and hopefully recovery. Not always the case, but yeah, it just allowed me to do that, and it also allowed me to move away from adult medicine as well. So you got to see children, newborns, all the way up to peds age, which for some boroughs it's 16 and some it's 18. So it's also about the diversity of patients that you see. It's not just adult medicine or pediatric medicine, it's a mixture of both. You see pregnant women, you see those with disabilities, you just see a whole range of conditions, and for me that is exactly what I wanted, so it was perfect. So being a GP in the future allowed me to not only work within GP surgeries, but as part of that you get to do home visits, care home visits, but also work in acute settings such as urgent care settings. You can even become a doctor within a prison and look after those inmates, and it also gives you more choice of location. So inevitably there are going to be more GP surgeries than there are going to be hospitals, so that just allows you to have a bigger choice of location when it comes to actually choosing where you want to work once you've qualified. And obviously I'm not going to deny the fact that it was a shorter training program. So currently GP training is 3 years, as opposed to being a hospital trainee where you eventually become a consultant within a certain specialty in the hospital. That is often 7 years plus. So it was a shorter training program, and also after a certain point when you got your hospital rotations out of the way, it meant that I no longer had to do night shifts and weekends and on calls within the hospital setting, which for me, around sort of my personality and the way I kind of get on with night shifts in terms of switching between the night and day, home life, childcare, it was just a really perfect combination. Now, I'm not saying that GP or being a GP is the best thing ever. It's a personal choice, and it's opinion that you can have really once you've entered the field of medicine and you've tried and tested other specialties for yourself. So these are my personal reasons, and there were probably a lot more that I just forgot to mention, but those are a brief sort of list of all the ones. So I hope it gives you a better understanding of why I specifically chose GP training, and it might help you make the choice, in addition to watching my work vlogs and just seeing, you know, how we get trained and how my shifts are, particularly in hospital. So far I've had back-to-back hospital rotations, which is kind of good in a way because it means I'm all done with them now. So I finished with my last rotation, which you might have seen, and it was psychiatry, and I'm now moving on to a GP practice, and I'm going to be doing this for 18 months equivalent. So as you know, I'm part-time, I do 80%. So obviously that means that my training is going to be roughly 20% longer. I can go into that in a whole other video, but yeah. I also wanted to pause here to say thank you to the sponsor of today's video, which is Luisa. I've partnered with them before because they are so great and they have the best jewellery pieces that are really elegant and affordable. So I'll show you some of the pieces that I picked up from their store, which was kindly gifted to me from them. So I've got these amazing earrings. I'll show you a close up. But those who wear earrings, you'll know how difficult it is to find sort of tight fitting hoops that just look elegant without looking too big. I also picked out this really nice ring. So I'm kind of like getting into rings, but it's hard to choose them when you already have an engagement ring. So I really like this. It's super elegant, and I've paired it with this really nice bracelet. I'm getting into bracelets these days as well. You can check out the description for the link to their website to see all of their amazing Valentine's Day promotions, so have a look. Anyways, thank you again to them, and let's move on to the second part of the video. If you're also wondering what this is, it's not part of my fireplace. It's this foam protector that I put. This is a little bit sharp if you touch it, and Ella has kind of like being around poking and prodding with her fingers, so I put this piece here. It doesn't look the best, but we're going to keep it there for a couple of years. Anyways, so let's go on and talk about the AKT. Ever since I told you guys that I was revising for the AKT and that I passed with, in my opinion, it's a really nice score, which was 91.5%. I have had loads of you guys asking me to do a video about the resources I used, how I prepared. Oh, delivery. 1 second, guys. Okay, we're back. I just got an Amazon delivery for like a stroller bag that I ordered, one that kind of clips in between the two handles of the pram that we have, so very exciting stuff. Anyway, so as I was saying about revising for the AKT, so I'm going to keep it brief, succinct, tell you guys everything you need to know about achieving a score as well as I did. So I'm gonna break it down into a few sections. That is preparation, revising, the resources that I used, and the actual exam day itself. So the amount of time that you spare to actually prepare for this exam is really personal to you in terms of what specific rotation you're doing or going to be doing around the time of the exam, how busy you are at home, how busy your rota is, and you know, childcare commitments and that sort of stuff. So for me, I sat the exam in October and I started to revise in April. So that gave me around 6 months. Now, when I said this to some people, they thought it was really early, but the resources that I chose to revise through meant that if I was going to take it slow and do a little bit every day, and that's kind of when I needed to start. So basically set a time frame, start when you think that you need to. And also the way you can calculate this is depending on what resource or question bank you choose, see how many questions there are that you need to get through, and then divide them by how many days you have. And that will give you roughly sort of the number of questions you need to go through per day and per week. And if that's something that's realistic to you, then that is something that you need to stick with. So for me, for example, that was going through 20 to 30 questions a day, or roughly 150 a week. And obviously I ramped that up towards the end when I was repeating some questions and doing mocks and that kind of stuff. But roughly that is when I needed to start. And also another thing that I did was I was in contact with a friend. You could have a friend or colleague that was also sitting the exam within the same sitting. So someone that you can be held accountable to, someone that you also push along and, you know, check their progress, someone that you can revise with, because sometimes reading and writing and so on is one thing, but talking about the concepts and questions and the guidelines out loud really helps cement that information in. So for me, the person that I chose was a friend of mine all the way back from Biomedical Sciences, who also ended up doing medicine, who also did FY1 FY2 and ended up in GP training just like I did. And then we took mat leave around the same time, so ended up deciding to sit the AKT at the same time. So loads of stars aligned and we ended up revising together. So that was great. So going on to the resources that I used to revise, and those were three things. So I used passmedicine, the AKT question bank. I used the rcgp self-test questions, and also I listened to audiobooks that were gifted to me from Dr. Eamon Aurora. So those of you who are preparing for the AKT will be familiar with his name. So passmedicine was the biggest question bank that I needed to get through. I think, if I'm not wrong, it had around 4,000 or was it 3,000 questions, and it was quite a big sort of thing to get through. And the way we did it was we did it by specialties. So we would work through the questions of, for example, cardiology, do all of the questions, and this is the way I did it. So I brought myself a notebook. I didn't do any textbook work. We started off reading guidelines from CKS guidelines and so on, but it was just getting too complicated. It just wasn't going in, so we went straight to the question bank. So we would choose the specialty and work through the questions. And let me just show you an example. So here, cardiology, I would go through the questions. If there were any questions that I got wrong, or if there were questions that we classify as high yield, meaning there are going to be multiple questions around that specific topic, or the exam is likely to have a question from that area because it's just such an important and common area, and then I would write it out in just bullet points and then highlight the really important parts. And so I basically had about 5 or 6 pages of bullet point notes for each specialty. Some of them were longer, so for example, women's health, and I can't remember what other section, things like MSK, I ended up having more notes on just because they were a bigger topic. So no specific note taking, just jotting down the ones that I got wrong and the really important ones. So for example, like stages of hypertension and so on. And then once I went through each topic, I then sort of went back and did the self-test questions for each topic. So for example, if I started with cardiology, once I finished the Pass Med question bank, I went back to cardiology, but this time on self-test, and did their cardiology questions. And so I would spare like a couple of pages in my notebook to have those notes as well. So in the end, this notebook was just 1 page. I just had like 1 page left, I think, so it ended up working out perfectly somehow. Had notes from Pass Medicine and self-test. And this was going to be my revision that I read in the last few days coming up to the exam, which I'm going to talk about. And so how did revising with my friend come into this? What we would do is, say for example, we did cardiology and it took us about a week or 10 days to get through. We would say, do you want to FaceTime on Tuesday night once we put the kids to sleep and just run through some questions? So what we would do is we would both open up our cardiology notes and just question each other. And because of the things that we wrote down were mainly the things that we got wrong, it was really reinforcing the concepts that we didn't quite understand or we didn't quite grasp. And then we can discuss things, and it just meant that it sort of stuck better. And it also just gave you that reassurance that, you know, someone's also having like a shitty time every evening revising for this exam type thing. So yeah, it really helped. And then what I would do is, say for example, if I've gone out for a walk, I'm taking a shower, I'm cleaning the bathroom, I would have the audio book from Aim and Aurora like playing so that I could listen to it. So say for example, I've finished cardiology with self-test, I'd then listen to the cardiology section of his podcast sort of revision audio book that he had. So it really just sort of reinforced, and I'd be listening to it and I'd be like, yep, I know that, yep, I know that, okay, yep, I need to remember that as well. And it just sort of tied everything together. So basically I did not go on to any courses, I didn't pay for anything extra apart from these question banks. I feel as though for me doing courses, it kind of gives me a bit more anxiety than anything. Oh my god, is that another delivery? Okay, that wasn't a delivery, that was my dad. So I was just saying, yeah, so those kind of courses gives me more anxiety than anything. It kind of, I just feel like overwhelmed with everything that we've gone through in the day. And unless I've revised everything myself, going to those classes or courses doesn't really help me. I just like doing things in my own space, in my own time, in my own environment kind of thing. But obviously everyone's different, so. And then what I did was, coming up to the exam, so coming up to sort of the last 4 days of the exam, I basically focused on mainly reading my notes and then also going through the mock tests on PassMed and a mock test on self-test. And also I did the AIT questions. So if you're familiar with rcgp, you'll also be familiar with the AIT questions. And then I also did kind of like a cheat sheet of all of the 2-week weight criterias and like for each specialty, so like lung, gastric cancer, colorectal cancer, and just wrote them all down so that just before I went into the exam, I had a memory of like all of the criterias. And so coming up to the day of the exam for me didn't go as well as I'd hoped on the day. So the stats I found quite difficult. It was quite different to the one on PassMed. I would actually say that PassMed was a lot harder than the stats that came up, but also the stats that came up was it wasn't like easy to follow. It was like graphs that weren't easy to read. It's a bit difficult for me to explain, but yeah. But it's still doable, so still go through the PassMed questions and self-test questions, but keep an open mind when you're in the exam. And there are also quite a lot of questions where I actually knew the answers to, but then the actual options that were listed below weren't the ones that I would use. So I can't remember what the question was, but I thought the answer was like a specific mouthwash, but that mouthwash wasn't listed, it was like another mouthwash. So then I was like, I know the answer, and I really hope that the secondary answer that I've chosen is actually still the right answer, because I don't know. So yeah, so I left the exam feeling quite anxious, wasn't quite sure about, you know, the results that I would get, but I was very lucky that when the results got announced, I got 91.5%, so I was ecstatic. So that is why I wanted to show you guys exactly all the resources that I chose to help you on your journey to acing the AKT as well. Ella is awake, guys. I need to go. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next vlog.